So our application right now is running. I have my MySQL container running and I'm connected to my database locally just to make sure that everything goes well. So let's open my Postman, take a look at the get all tasks and make sure that we have no task right now. So we already had our happy path working from the last videos that we did. But just to double check, this is like, for example, let's create a new task, title be awesome, and we create this task with ID number 15. So just taking a look, now we have the ID 15 take tasks be awesome. Now let's take a look at, let's get this task. I can close these two. So these three are the ones that we need updating today for the error handling. So now let's take a look at task 15, which is the one that we just created. And we can correctly see the status 100OK and the response is be awesome. Also note that the completed is false. Now let's take a look at the update. So if we take a look at the task 15, the body be awesome but completed, we're going to change it to true. So if we send this, now we receive the 15 be awesome completed true. We can also take a look at the previous one, the get, and now we can see that it is true. And we can also now delete it. Again, this was working before. Just want to double check that we are all in the same page. So we send the 15, we get a 204 no content, which was a success, and we have literally no content here. All right, so that was all the happy path. We know the happy path was working. The issue was when we were trying to do this with an ID that didn't actually exist and we were still receiving a 200 OK or a 204 OK. So that is what we are trying to fix in this video. I already went ahead and modified the code. I'm going to guide you through it, but I just want you to see how this works now. Now that I tried to get the task 15, which doesn't exist anymore because I deleted it, now we can see a 404 not found. The message is task not found. And same if we try to do the update, 404 not found, message task not found, and the delete 15, status 404 not found, message task not found. So in summary, we had to add a raise error component to make sure that this was working as we needed. So if you remember from the previous video, here we had our global file and we used to have two flows, but now we have just one. So once it comes here, it will first go to the transform message to retrieve the task ID. I can show you what that looks like. So if we go to resources, DW, task ID, URI param right here, we are first checking if there already exists a variable called task ID, then we don't want to replace that. So if it already exists, just use that one. But if it doesn't exist, we are first gonna try to get it from the attributes, which is the case for the get and the delete, but it will not, we will see what happens with the update. But in summary, we are gonna call this flow twice for the update. The first time to make sure that it exists, and the second one to retrieve the updated value. So when we go there for the first time, we will be using the attributes URI params task ID, but when we go to the second time, we need to be using this variable, and I will show you why. But for now, you can see how this is working. So after that data with code, we have now the select. So we're doing a select answers from task where ID equals task ID, which is what we are setting up here. And here we are sending the variables task ID. Then we have a choice. So if this is empty, if the payload is empty, so if the select did not actually return a task and no task exists, then we're gonna do the 404. Before we go that route, we already had this transform message before. We're just putting it here in the otherwise. So if there was a task retrieve, we are just going to transform these to JSON. It's just literally whatever came. We are mapping it to the JSON format that we need for the response. So if we go this route, we first are going to set up the payload, which is not showing in the UI for some reason. But if we take a look here, we can press on this transform message and we can see here inside the choice, So we have the when, and we have the transform, and we're pretty much saying set the payload with the message task not found in a JSON format. And then we are also setting up a variable here called HTTP status, and the value is 404. So if this looks familiar to you, it's because we are also using that in the main flow, which is the to-do API implementation. Here, inside all of these on error propagate, we are doing the same thing. We have the inline script to select the message bad request, and right now there's a bug, so we cannot see the variable's HTTP status, but I can show it to you via the XML. So we have here, for example, message unsupported media type, and we can see HTTP status 415, 406, 405, and so on. So we're pretty much just replicating what this transform message is doing, but doing it here from our global. So we are setting up the task not found, and then the 404, which is in the XML, we just cannot see it here for a temporary bug. After we set that up, we are raising this error. The type doesn't really matter right now because we don't have any global element configuration for the error handler. So that's fine, just put whatever you need, but this is gonna raise a type. So if you later need to make sure that this type is being handled properly with an on error continue or an on error propagate, then make sure you know what type you're setting up. For this case, doesn't matter. I just want to raise the error so it stops the flow and it doesn't continue with the rest of the flow. That's it. So this is what this is doing. It's pretty much just checking if the task exists, then just put it in a JSON. If it doesn't exist, then raise an error and don't continue the flow. So now let's take a look at the get task by ID. This is the simplest one. This is pretty much just getting here and running that flow reference, nothing else. So that is very straightforward. The second one, let's take a look at the delete first because it's simpler. So first it's coming here and it's checking if the task ID exists. If it does, it's going to continue. If it doesn't, it's going to send an error, so it's not going to continue. So if it does, it's going to come here, delete from task where ID equals task ID, which is the variable task ID that we are setting up. The problem comes when we go here to the update, because we have here the flow ref. We are setting this up. The problem is that here we are setting up the task input of what we are going to send to the update for the SQL query. So that is a problem because the data that is being set up here has to be the same data that we sent from the beginning, but because we are showing this flow reference, because it's gonna go do the whole get task ID and everything, it's replacing the payload. So when it reaches this, it will use the data from here instead of the data from here. So to fix that, we went ahead here in the flow reference, we went to advanced, and we are now saving this payload in a before update variable. So that is great because we can use that. The downside of that is that when we are creating the task ID variable inside this flow reference, it's just staying there. It's not being outputted to this side. So now we have to reference this variable that we are setting up here, the before update, instead of the task ID. So when we reach here and we do the create task input right here, we now are taking the ID from the vars.beforeupdate.id, and we can also use a default payload.id in case there is one. Otherwise, it's just gonna take it from the vars. So there's that. That's how that's being created. After it creates a payload in a Java format, it will come here to the SQL. It will do the update task, say title, blah, 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 where ID equals ID, which is taken from this payload. Now, after we update this, if everything went well, we will just be receiving another random payload like updated rows 1, should be 1. And then after we get that, we need to get now the actual payload that was saved in the database. So now, once again, we run the get task by ID, and that is where we get to the point that I showed you at the beginning, where we are trying to get the task ID, but now, because we don't have attributes anymore, this will no longer work, but now it will get it from this other variable, which is the beforeupdate.id. So once it gets that, it will retrieve the actual content of the task, output it in a JSON format, and return it to the user. So those were the changes. In summary, we pretty much just went here in the flow that everyone is calling, and we are just doing a check. We're doing the select. If nothing is returned, then we are sending a 404, raising the error and stopping the rest of the flows. If everything went well and it was able to find it, then we are doing the transformation to a JSON format from the Java. And that's how it works. That's how we got it working. Once you send the 404, Postman here automatically knows that 404 means not found, so you don't have to set that up. You just have to set up the HTTP status 404. And the message being returned is task not found. All right, I hope it was helpful. Let me know if you want me to do some videos on demystifying error handling, like on error continue, on error propagate, and if you want me to do that in ACB, of course, because I don't do Studio anymore, I am happy to do that. Just let me know in the comments below if that's what you want, or let me know if you want some other type of content. I am happy to do whatever you prefer. And that pretty much ends the whole to-do app implementation that we had for this specific use case. Of course, I can add more videos if you want me to do something else, like separating this API in experience, process, and system layers or something like that. I am happy to help you understand whatever you need from ACB. All right. Hope you have a great day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.